Good evening. Welcome to our study tonight. Tonight in the news, the first off we want to tell you about is this. A whistleblower has exposed the woke Google agenda and their culture. Whistleblowers are exposing the tech giant Google's internal governing policies are completely dominated by woke ideology. When Google's artificial intelligence, their AI program Gemini, told you about that before, began generating images last month of the founding fathers, they pictured them as black, and they also had popes as women. Former Google Ventures partner Sean Magnus said he was not surprised at all. Google's Gemini failures revealed how broken Google's culture really is. But what had happened was not a one-off incident. The Free Press spoke to numerous former Google employees who all reported that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is part of every single thing that Google does. Woke Gemini generators were not an accident. The model is just a reflection of the people who trained it. An unnamed former lawyer with Google reported that he was told to increase personal DEI goals. After Google software engineer James Damore was fired for questioning the wisdom of Google's DEI commitment, the tech giant became even more radical. They doubled down. And so basically, Google is doing it as much as they possibly can. One fired executive said that working at Google was like being in an authoritarian country where only certain views and people were accepted. Google has long been known as a supporter of left-wing causes and ideologies, but this latest report comes in the midst of increased scrutiny over how DEI policies impact major companies that everyday Americans rely on. Let's go a little bit further in the news, talk about the New World Order. U.S. falls off on the global happiness scale. Why are so many people unhappy in the United States? Finland is the world's happiest country. U.S. drops to an all-time low. The New York Post reported earlier this week. Gallup's 2024 happiness report, which surveyed over 100,000 people in 143 countries, found that as U.S. in 2024 dropped 8 spots and now ranks 23rd overall. However, they rank 62nd in the micro-analysis are young people, specifically those under 30 in America. So why? Why are young people so unhappy? And so much so that they're dropping the happiness score of the entire country with them. Well, turns out a major suspected culprit, you guessed it, is social media. This week, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said, "What's happening in social media is the equivalent of having children in cars that have no safety features and driving on roads with no speed limits, no traffic lights, and no rules whatsoever. And we're telling them, you know what, do your best. Figure out how to manage it." It's insane if you think about it. He even added that social media for children is similar to taking medicine that has yet to be proven safe. Social media, while it can be a very beneficial tool for marketing and networking and other things, has gone far beyond its uses. It's a cesspool of ill-willed sexual predators and scammers. It's also increasingly becoming a place where young people get their news and their opinions, despite its factual unreliability. So how to respond to the reality that social media is hurting people, specifically young people? Well, Generation Z is among the least likely generation in decades to have a biblical worldview. And we know that they are spending inordinate amounts of time on social media, Chuck Carlson said. And it's also prone to luring people into isolation. The antidote to a lonely generation is authentic community. Thankfully, a biblical worldview tells us where we can find authentic community. Specifically for Christians, we find authentic community in church, which is God's design for a community. The solution to unhappiness is joy, real joy, soul-filling, life-giving joy that comes through a relationship with Jesus Christ and is celebrated in community with other Christ followers. So we know that social media is harming our kids, especially Generation Z, pulling down our happiness. Can you imagine that? That's why they're more depressed. That's why their suicide rates are going up. And according to most recent polls, the only solution, or the real solution, is a community-based relationship found in churches. Let's go a little bit further, and I'm going to tell you this one, and I'm going to ask you to really listen to this because it's probably the most amazing thing I've told you in Bible prophecy. If you're waiting for Jesus to come back, you should take a giant step forward with this announcement. Red heifer to be sacrificed in Israel this year during 2024. This is amazing news. Since the time of Moses, Only 9 red heifers have ever been sacrificed. There's a tremendous amount of speculation that another sacrifice could happen very, very soon. In September 2022, 5 red heifers were flown to from the state of Texas to the land of Israel, which I've already previously reported to you. Since that time, one of them has been disqualified. They found a white hair on it. But the other 4 continue to be candidates for a red heifer sacrifice. There was a practice run for the purification ceremony at the end of 2023. A large altar that has been prepared for the sacrifice was also there. But an official ceremony must be conducted before the heifers get too old to be used for such a sacrifice. So will a red heifer be sacrificed in Israel in 2024? A red heifer sacrifice would need to happen on the Mount of Olives, and the land where the sacrifice would take place is right now owned by Rabbi Yitzhak Mamo. According to those working on the project, the ceremony of the red heifer needs to be performed on the Mount of Olives, and in a place that would have looked directly into where the temple once stood. The land directly east of the temple was purchased 12 years ago, and it meets both of those standards. It had to be exactly at the front of the place that the priest that made the ceremony can see the holy of the holy place. But the clock is ticking. If the heifers get too old, they will no longer qualify. Mamo explained that we are very close to the 3rd year of these cows, which means that with the help of God, we will get permission from God and from the people to make the ceremony, and then we can be pure. Recently, there's been a lot of buzz that we could actually see a red heifer sacrifice very, very soon. Last month, All Israel News reported that the Temple Institute wants to conduct the sacrifice before Passover of 2024. That's very soon. If you're going to rebuild a temple, you need to purify it. And purifying it, according to the book of Numbers, chapter 19, you need a red heifer and a red heifer ceremony. It results in the creation of ash from the red heifer mixed with water. And that cleanses the entire nation of Israel, and actually from ritual, it gives them ritual purity. And then the ceremony requires some of the blood to be sprinkled at the front of the tabernacle. That later became the temple. It usually took place again on the Mount of Olives, where they're planning right now to do this again very, very soon in the coming days. It's essential for all aspects of the temple and the temple worship to take place. Even without the presence of a physical temple, the ceremony would allow the general population to be ritually cleansed and remove much of the religious prohibition for a Jewish presence on the Temple Mount. Obviously, it gets a lot of people scared, including the Muslims. Purifying them so they can actually go up, and even if there's no temple, they can pray on the Temple Mount just as if there was a temple. They're going to do this Passover weekend. That's what's so Easter weekend. And that's what they're saying that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what they're saying. There's been a lot of speculation on social media that a red heifer sacrifice could possibly take place on March 29th because the Sabbath of the red heifer begins at sundown that evening. It's called Shabbat Parah in Hebrew. The year 5784 begins on sundown, Friday, 29th of March, 2024. Shabbat Parah, which is literally the Sabbath of the red heifer, takes place on the Shabbat before Shabbat HaKodesh in preparation for Passover. And you can see that in Numbers chapter 19, verses 1 to 22. So the red heifer has to be, the purifying of the red heifer in the Jewish temple is part of the manner in which the Kohanim, which is the priest, and the Jewish people purified themselves so they'd be pure to sacrifice in the Korban Pesach. Now I know those words don't mean a whole lot to you, but suffice it to say this: they need that red heifer to be sacrificed very, very soon. The Temple Institute fully intends to conduct a red heifer sacrifice some point in 2024. When that happens, Israel's enemies are going to go absolutely bonkers. A CBS News reported Hamas has actually admitted that the red heifers were one of the reasons why they attacked Israel on October 7th. I told you that before also. Once Israel's enemies realize that a red heifer has been sacrificed, they're going to go absolutely nuts. So this is a really, really big deal. Events in the Middle East are about to get very, very, very interesting. Speaking of the Mideast, let's give you this one. This I can't believe, but knowing our world, everything is believable. Repeating history. Evil Iran will be the leader to chair a UN agency on Purim. The Islamic Republic of Iran will assume the presidency of the United Nations Conference on Disarmament on Monday. How ironic. The Conference of Disarmament, CDI, is a multilateral forum established in 1979 by the international community to negotiate arms control and disarmament agreements based at the Palais des Nations in Geneva. The CD has part of its permanent agenda dialogue about nuclear weapons. CD also works toward the reduction of military budgets. Hillel Nourer, the executive director of UN Watch, decried the move on Twitter. He said this: "Today marks a very sad and shameful day," he wrote. "It's a travesty that the murderous Islamic regime in Iran is becoming today the president of the UN Conference on Disarmament. This is a terrorist regime that murders its own people, that beats, blinds, tortures, and rapes women and girls. This is absolutely ludicrous. Shows how totally useless, I'm saying, the entire UN is. At tomorrow morning's plenary, when Tehran takes the gavel, we're urging all countries not to carry on business as usual at the Conference on Disarmament," he said. Nourer posted an online petition calling on people to protest the UN's decision. "We're urging them to walk out, or at minimum lower the level," Nourer said. "Don't let an ambassador be in the room, and express outrage at the Islamic regime's horrific actions. Don't let this go unnoticed. Don't be silent. Speak out," he says. Several U.S. lawmakers slammed the move as well. Senator Claire Chandwell tweeted, "The Islamic Republic of Iran is holding the position while developing a nuclear bomb, and being found to have committed serious human rights breaches is an insult to the entire world." Can you imagine? Iran has for decades lied to the international community regarding its nuclear development, and unabashedly serves as perhaps the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Iran should be prohibited from occupying this post and banned from holding any leadership role in the international community, especially any to do with weapons of mass destruction that they are right now producing. So if you think the UN was legitimate, trust me, it's illegitimate. That UN should be chiseled off New York and sailed into the Atlantic, because it has nothing to do with anything in the way of peace. All it does is go against Israel, which, by the way, America, for one of the first times, has allowed a resolution to go by talking about a ceasefire for Israel. We actually turned on Israel this last week. In response, Netanyahu canceled the delegation coming to America this week. And so we're watching some really weird things happening. I'm afraid America is going to be lining itself up for curses if they go against Israel, according to Scripture. Let's talk about economy. I heard today that the Democrats are no longer using the word Bidenomics. Well, it's about time, because Bidenomics does not work. U.S. end game approaching. This article says, government spending more than twice what it's collecting. Now, if you know anything in simple terms, when the government has to take in taxes and revenue, that's how they get their budget. Well, they're taking in half of what they're spending. Shouldn't come as any great news to anybody, but it is. So are you ready for this? I hope so. The U.S. is issuing $1 trillion in debt every 100 days just to keep operating. 100 trillion, listen to it, $1 trillion in debt every 100 days just to keep operating. We've added 60% to the national debt since 2018. Germany, a country with major economic woes, only added just 32%. The latest budget deficit data simply confirmed that the day of reckoning is going to come for America very, very soon. In February, the U.S. collected $271 billion in various tax receipts and spent twice that much, $567 billion, more than double what it collected. So the writing is on the wall. Spending is about 50% higher, compared to where it was in 2020. The end result is that in February, the budget deficit rose $296 billion, up 12.9% from a year prior, and the second highest February deficit on record. There it is. And the punchline, on a cumulative basis, the budget deficit in fiscal 2024, which began October 2023, is now $828 billion, the second largest cumulative deficit through February on record. But wait, there's more. Because in a world where the U.S. is spending more than twice what it's collecting, the end game is very, very near: debt collapse. And while it won't be tomorrow or next week, it's coming. And it's also why the U.S. is now selling $1 trillion in debt every 100 days just to keep operating and absorbing all those millions of illegal immigrants who will keep voting Democrat to preserve the socialist system of the U.S. so beloved by the Soros clan. And it gets even worse because we are now in a Ponzi finance stage of the Minsky cycle with total interest on the debt annualizing well over $1 trillion and rising every day. That is the interest, rising every day. Which means the U.S. debt will now rise exponentially higher until the inevitable moment when the U.S. dollar loses its reserve status and it all comes crashing down. And the Biden administration is pushing out debt to higher and higher levels. With the annual budget deficit apparently stuck at around $1.8 trillion, you'd think there'd be a serious effort to cut back on red ink, especially since the economy is strong. But the fiscal 2025 budget released by the Biden administration yesterday projects another $16.3 trillion in deficits over the next 10 years. The spin will be positive, of course. Biden aide said the budget deficit would be $3 trillion lower than a previous forecast over the next 10 years, assuming massive tax hikes are enacted, which won't happen. To say that the $7.3 trillion Biden budget is dead on arrival on Capitol Hill is an understatement. The budget for this fiscal year, which is 6 months overdue, still hasn't been passed and may languish for several more weeks. The Biden budget relies on huge new taxes on profitable businesses and wealthy Americans, with a stock transaction tax, a wealth tax, numerous other tax hikes that have no chance in Congress. The real tax brawl will come in 2025 as the Trump tax cuts must be renewed, still another source of higher deficits in our opinion. So we are looking at a brick wall and our economy is heading straight for it. Let me give you a little bit about religion. This is pro-life student faces threats. Today there is a growing hatred for anyone or anything that reflects biblical morality. An unhinged protest against the meeting of pro-life students at the University of Manchester, United Kingdom, proved it. Terrified pro-life student groups need police protection from baying mob at Manchester University, the article says. As the students walked to the meeting room, a hostile crowd of about 250 protesters reportedly, listen to this, threw eggs at the building and attacked pro-life students with verbal abuse and threats. Protesting students chanted, "Shame on you," and according to some accounts, spat at some of the pro-life supporters and told one first-year student they hoped she would get raped. A heavily pregnant woman was transported home by the police by fear of injury. "I really thought," she said, "our lives were in danger." The crowd was extremely violent, spitting, throwing eggs at us, screaming and swearing. As Western society, once undergirded to at least some degree by biblical values, flee those same values, we see more of the works of the flesh becoming evident. Galatians 5 records these characteristics. Galatians 5 says, "In the last days there'll be hatred, contention, wrathful outbursts, even murderous spirits." 5:19-21. These characteristics reflect none other than the God of this age. As history approaches the return of Jesus Christ, we should expect such behaviors to intensify. But Jesus will soon return as the Prince of Peace. And man, if we need anything, that's exactly what we need. Let's talk about this. It's a big issue today. In the Senate, Dems are calling protecting unborn babies dangerous and extreme. "I'm not the same person," a 19-year-old girl known as only as number 13 wanted the Supreme Court to know. "I regret my abortion so much. I think about it every day," she said. "Taking the abortion pill was traumatizing," she says. "Thinking about the tiny little person I just died a little bit. I miss my baby." A woman listed as AC thinks back with dismay after calling 911. She called the abortion center in pain and grief after taking the abortion pill, and they told her to call 911. So she just lied there in fetal position. Her bleeding continued for days. She says of the gruesome experience, "There was also a smell that reminded me of what I had done." On Capitol Hill, these nightmares are what the Democrats call choice. All this week, they proved that they'll do anything to keep women in the dark about the gruesome, lifelong realities of the pill. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana pressed the issue with one of the left's witnesses asking, if a healthy mother with a healthy baby wanted to have an abortion the day before birth, would it be okay with you? Caitlin Myers replied, "Senator, that is not how abortion care works." She tried to turn the tables. Kennedy interrupted. "It would be okay with you, wouldn't it?" Myers never directly answered the question, a fact that says all you need to know. Kennedy pressed the issue even further about birthday abortions until Myers, getting frustrated, claimed, I think that it's a really hard question to answer because that just doesn't happen. You're asking me about something that simply doesn't happen. Louisianans stopped her. Well, actually, I will tell you it's legal in Vermont, New Jersey, Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Alaska, and the District of Columbia. And the loon wing of the Democratic Party supports abortion up to the moment of birth. So do you support that or oppose to it? Myers didn't reply. That in itself is shocking. It's very interesting that none of the witnesses were willing to come out and say, no, I would not support abortion the day before a healthy mother with a healthy baby is due to deliver. What Democrats need to know about their own stance is that almost zero Americans support it. The position of today's elected Democrats in Congress on abortion is widely out of step with the American people. But because we use the term abortion, Democrats are able to get away with it. They're able to act as if this is a positive thing, not murder. Nothing about abortion is good. Since when has killing not been considered an extreme position? The use of the abortion drug is especially egregious because we know that the abortion drug is 4 times as dangerous as surgical abortion for the mother. You may have never heard that, but it is. And thanks to the Biden administration, who's bypassing state laws and safety concerns, women are receiving this drug, mifepristone, through the mail. And not unlike the dozens of women pleading with the Supreme Court to ban it, they're taking this drug alone in their bathrooms. And then they're hemorrhaging. And then they have uncontrollable bleeding where they don't know if it is too much or is this natural. They don't know what is about to happen to their body because they're not doctors. They weren't supposed to know. So that the abortion industry can make more money. They don't care about women. They're putting tens of thousands of them at risk, shipping it across state lines into pro-lifer states and in direct violation of these states' rights to protect unborn children. They're telling women, abortion is your only solution. And we have the chemical abortion drug that the abortion industry says is the easiest taking a Tylenol, but it's not. It's very different from a Tylenol. You have a significantly increased chance, 500%, of entering the emergency room, which is not something that someone who takes a Tylenol has. And we know that the abortion industry tells women it will just be like a heavy period. It will be natural. And then we know countless women end up delivering their unborn babies. Can you imagine? That's clearly recognizable as a baby into their toilets. And their hearts are broken forever because they didn't realize that was what was about to happen. This increase is tragic. And we really can't state that enough. It's horrific. I hope Biden knows that these deaths, this blood, is on his hands. Let's talk about this. We've been telling you about the solar eclipse that's coming April 8th, very soon. The surreal April 24 solar eclipse, total solar eclipse, renews debunked flat Earth conspiracy theories. Man, I've gotten this over and over again in my teachings for the year flat earthers, who are, by the way, extremely wrong. But listen to what this is saying. The sun and moon will perfectly align during the total solar eclipse, April 8th, to cast a narrow shadow of darkness on the Earth in the middle of the day. A surreal event that has renewed debunked conspiracy theories that clash with proven scientific explanation. How easily anti-science conspiracy theories can spread is obvious from this article. The experts who say the debunked flat Earth conspiracy theory doesn't slow down when an eclipse happens, even though the event is precisely explained because of scientists' deep understanding of celestial bodies and their orbits. I mean, come on. You're seeing 2 round bodies eclipse. I mean, how could you say there's still a flat Earth? There's a whole spectrum of conspiracy theories, though. Some harmless and others based on a wholesale rejection of science. Still others promoted for financial or political gain. In general, most flat earthers believe Earth is flat, hockey puck-like object covered by a dome, with walls of ice around the edge of the dome. And say it's not possible to view the curvature of the horizon from airplanes. They actually say that when you see the curvature of the space at 39,000 feet, it was actually the companies that made the airplanes that made convex lenses on the windows. They go out of their way. They also dispute photographic evidence from space, saying it can't be trusted and that NASA moon landing was a hoax. They think the sun and the moon glide above the ground at a much closer distance than astronomers have measured. A YouTube video promoting flat Earth ideas suggests that the sun and the moon are a similar size. That is not only stupid, it's ludicrous. If the sun and the moon were a similar size, you would die because you would have no heat on the sun coming to the Earth. A solar eclipse happens when the moon passes between the sun and the earth. That alignment casts a moving shadow on the earth. This leads to a period of partial or full darkness on a narrow stretch of the earth. The path is so narrow because of the huge distance and size of the sun, as well as the moon's distance from the earth. So when did people learn that the earth was round? Well, another different flat earth error out in the world. The common mistake, popularized in the 19th century, suggests that prior to the rise of science and scientific study, beginning in the 17th century, most people believed the earth to be flat. That's absolutely wrong. In fact, ancient Greeks figured out the earth was round around 500 BC, and it's been commonly accepted by scholars, navigators, and cartographers ever since. The Flat Earth Society was founded in 1956. It's one of the oldest conspiracy theories that we have. And so we realize that this eclipse, which is a sign from God, is going to have a lot of strange conspiracies that are around it. Let me tell you something else strange that's happening around it. The National Guard has been deployed among precautions taken for the upcoming solar eclipse. I read that, I thought, the National Guard is being counted out. The eclipse in most cities is going to happen for about 2 minutes. Listen to this. The National Guard is only supposed to be deployed in emergency situations. But these days, the National Guard is being used for all sorts of things. For example, hundreds of National Guard soldiers are being used to check the bags of those riding the subways in New York City. That sets a very alarming precedent. And now we've learned that National Guard troops will be deployed during the Great American Eclipse on April 8th. What in the world do they expect to happen during the eclipse? Without a doubt, it'll certainly be a historic event. It's being projected that it will be the most viewed astronomical event in the entire history of our country. And virtually everyone in North America will be able to view at least a partial eclipse. It's being reported that the Oklahoma National Guard, first responders, as well as its units will have hazmat response capabilities, when as many as 100,000 people are expected to visit one county. The Guard will provide first responders as well as units with hazmat response capabilities in case of an incident like an industrial fire. I'm really not sure I'm following all this. I can understand that they feel the need to be prepared, but bringing in the National Guard is a little bit of overkill, don't you think? Residents of Oklahoma are being urged to stock up on gas and groceries prior to the eclipse. They're also being instructed to have multiple forms of communication besides cellular. To prepare for the eclipse, the state laid out some tips to plan ahead right from the state website. Oklahomans should schedule errands and appointments a few days in advance before the eclipse, as well as stock up on gas and groceries. The state also recommends having multiple forms of communication besides cellular, being careful on the road, and staying updated on weather conditions. Seriously? They want people to do all this for an eclipse that's going to last for only a few minutes? Something's up here. At least 4 states have now warned their citizens to stock up on food. Just look at what officials at Hays County, Texas are telling your residents to do. Please park only in designated areas, not on private property, in areas that cause safety issues. Traffic delays and road closures will happen. Longer wait times for restaurants, more congestion, pedestrian and vehicle, delayed emergency 911 response, cell service interruptions, lack of cell service, higher than normal stress levels and or heated tempers, credit card machines not working, bring cash. Why would credit card machines not work? And why would phone services be interrupted? I don't understand this. In Arkansas, they actually held a live training exercise that simulated emergencies that might happen during the eclipse. Personally, I'm not expecting a major disaster or an emergency on the day of the eclipse. But you never know. Maybe I'm wrong. In fact, his recent interview with Tucker Carlson, former U.S. Representative Ron Paul specifically warned about a potential for a black swan event. Now that might happen. Ron Paul, recognized for this constant principles of foresight into economic and foreign policy, used the platform to express his concerns about unexpected, significant events that could catch the world by surprise. I think we're reaching the point when some sudden thing is going to happen, he said. I believe in that theory of the black swan. Yes, it's going to pop up and it's not going to be controllable, Paul said. But this eclipse will be a very big deal. The giant X over America that Great American Eclipse of 2017 started will be completed by the Great American Eclipse of 2024. And the Great American Eclipse of 2024 moves across the nation. As it moves, the sun, the moon, and the other 7 planets in our solar system will all be lined up in the sky, a very rare event. Our entire solar system is literally screaming that this day is important. And you would think that more people would be talking about the giant X that's about to be completed directly over the New Madrid fault line, among other things. Regardless of what one thinks might be coming, it's always a good time to examine your life and make sure it's right before the Lord, because I believe this is definitely a sign from God. And lastly tonight, I want to give you this one. I actually put this in good news because I think it is. Recognize the times, mankind's exponential increase in knowledge. 3 major signs from Daniel that mark the fact that Jesus is coming back very, very, very soon. The prophet Daniel has been listening intently to the angel Gabriel pronouncing a series of mind-blowing messages. God was revealing the rise and fall of great empires to Daniel, leading eventually to a global empire led by a despot who the Apostle John later would call the Antichrist, with this inevitable demise at the divine hand of God. Now, Daniel, when he wrote it, knew absolutely nothing about these nations coming. He had no idea what he was writing about. Gabriel added to Daniel there would be 3 major signs that would mark the time of the end. Daniel's 3 major signs most people don't talk about, in which the finale of this final series of events would culminate. We find the source text for our signs in Daniel 12:4. But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of the time. Until the time of the end. Many will go to and fro, and knowledge will increase. He added that only those living in the end times who were wise, meaning spiritually discerning, would at last understand these prophecies. They would recognize that the exponential increase in knowledge, travel, and prophetic understanding would herald the end of these human-controlled kingdoms with the second advent of Messiah. So first up, sign 1, he tells us, that we should know if we're living in the end times is an increase in knowledge. Has it happened? Well, unless you're a toddler playing with your mother's Android, you've lived long enough to realize that the way we obtain information has changed a great deal, a whole great deal, over the last 10, 15 years. Let's not even talk decades, let's just talk a couple of years. The child attaining adulthood today can, with a shudder, look back at the early 2000s when there was no Wikipedia, no Gmail, no social media like Facebook and Twitter, now called X, no cloud computing, no tablets, no smartphones, and certainly no high-speed internet connectivity. For thousands of years of human history, life remained pretty much the same. Sure, every 300 years or so, the world eked out an invention and revolutionized the world, moving humanity from, say, the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. But for the most part, limitations in travel left most inventions cordoned off to a tiny corner of the world. But then AD 1454 arrived, and the German goldsmith Johann Gutenberg released the very first mobile reusable type press, like an antique photocopier, if you will. At last, words of knowledge could be mass copied onto paper and distributed far and wide. The age of the printed book revolutionized the world, and Gutenberg started with the fount of all knowledge, the Bible. The most world-changing advances were made just in the last 150 years or so. Each discovery came faster and faster. The increasing rapid acceleration in learning is called the exponential curve. Our knowledge has been experiencing exponential growth as one breakthrough builds upon another at an increasing faster and faster pace. What would you say was the most important discovery that helped us facilitate the advent of this massive explosion in the growth of knowledge? If you answered the computer, you'd be correct. When it comes to the exponential curve for computers, the old joke is this: how do you know when your computer is obsolete? The answer is when you take it out of the box. That's not too far from the truth, though, for computer companies double computer processing speeds every 18 months. Known as Moore's Law, after Intel co-founder Gordon Moore, in 2023, quantum computers began processing at speeds equivalent to the human brain. By 2045, it's a mere quarter of a century. Moore's Law predicts we will possess computers with the capability and computational ability equivalent to the entire human race. Computers have aided in all major scientific discoveries of our day. Ability to easily store and access data means we can continue to learn like we've never learned before in human history. The exponential curve is not just limited to computers. Other advances in biomedicine, space science, chemical engineering, human engineering, and all the other sciences have been climbing faster and steeper up their exponential curves with every passing day. It's expected that in the next 5 years, the world's technology will be 30 times more advanced than it is today. It's also been estimated that 65% of today's kindergartners, once they finally graduate from college, will ultimately end up working in completely new jobs that at this time don't even exist. Today's exponential increase in knowledge points to the fact that we are living in a prophesied end times and that Jesus is coming back soon. This is number one that Daniel said would happen. Number two, increase in transportation. Notice in the same prophecy, the angel told Daniel, besides a great increase in knowledge, many will travel to and fro. This tremendous increase in travel would also occur in the same context, being in the end times. So stop and think about how people traveled a single century ago. Most roads weren't even paved yet, and were traveled along by horse-drawn wagons. If you go onto YouTube and watch a video of San Francisco recorded back in 1906, you'll see far more horses than horseless carriages. People rarely, if ever, left their hometowns. Animal domestication and the early beginnings of decent roads, then bicycles, balloons, boats, and simple automobiles were developing, but not widely received or used. Since the early part of the 20th century, mankind went on to invent airplanes and jets, and we've even left the Earth's atmosphere in rockets and space shuttles. It used to take months for people to travel overseas by boat, 3 months, but now we travel the same distance abroad in mere hours. In today's world, people are always on the move, just as the angel prophesied to Daniel. Today's exponential increase in travel points to the fact that Jesus Christ is returning very soon, Daniel's second prophecy. Third, the increase in understanding prophecy. Did you know that Bible prophecy constitutes a whopping 31% of the Bible? God's overall plan for the ages appears to be rather like a 100-piece puzzle, and so far, He's only provided 75 pieces. One can make out the outline of a picture, but until certain events unfold, which then adds another new piece of the puzzle, the picture remains incomplete. I told you one piece that came together and is coming together probably this month, a red heifer sacrifice. Never has happened. Still, the 75 pieces we have now are far more numerous than what Daniel ever had. As Jesus explained to his disciples, Jesus' words, quote, "For truly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." Matthew 13:17. Even then, the apostles were expecting the imminent return of Christ and not a 2,000-year-long wait. Paul said, "We who are alive and remain." He was expecting Christ to come back in his lifetime. Today, the various end-time signs related to nature, society, world politics, technology, Israel, the economy, and spiritual signs are coming at such a fantastic rate that Bible prophecy teachers have begun to call the phenomenon the convergence. All the signs are coming together. So many end-time signs converging all at once has greatly enhanced our understanding of the end times. Bible prophecy told just as Gabriel said. Today's exponential increase in the understanding of God's prophetic word points us to the fact again that Jesus is returning extremely soon. So we need to recognize the times. These three major signs, along with hundreds of more provided in the Bible, being fulfilled literally in our day, reveal the fact that the Lord could indeed return at any single moment. Before I finish this broadcast, He could return. By looking through the filter of the Bible at the wondrous yet fearful events playing out before us, we should clearly understand the times that we are living in. As a result, we are comforted knowing that God's got it all under control. No matter how bad we hear the news, He's got it all under control. He has a great big plan in place, and that His children play a vital role in that plan. Christians are called to serve God in these dark times with all our unique giftedness, resources, and our experience. Now is the time to live your Christianity, to share it with others. That's in the news for tonight.